Funded by taxpayer contributions, the expectation is that the aircraft our military operates will be successful in fulfilling their designated roles to ensure our collective security. However, not all military aircraft meet this expectation. In this video, we will examine the 10 worst aircraft ever produced. Bell P-59 Airacomet. The Bell P-59 Airacomet, heralded as one of the initial American jet aircraft, was envisioned to be the game-changing fighter that would tilt the course of the war in favor of the Allies. However, its two General Electric J-31 engines proved to be a significant drawback, rendering it a subpar fighter at best. Weighing in at just under 14,000 lbs for its maximum takeoff weight, the combined thrust of 4,000 lbf generated by the engines resulted in the Airacomet adopting a rather sluggish design. This lack of maneuverability proved detrimental, especially considering the requirements for a truly exceptional fighter. Adding to its shortcomings, the underpowered engines also compromised the Airacomet's speed and range. In comparison to contemporary piston fighters, it boasted a cruising speed approximately 20% slower and a range that was 50% shorter. Ferry Fulmar. In contrast to many aircraft on this roster, the Ferry Fulmar didn't face an inevitable downfall from the outset. Upon its initial deployment, it earned high regard for being among, if not the most dependable aircraft in the entire British air fleet. However, its reliability couldn't compensate for the fact that its performance left much to be desired. While it could be counted on to take flight when necessary, when pitted against formidable adversaries like the Mitsubishi A6M0, its chances were slim due to its inferior performance and handling characteristics. Heinkel He 177. Greif. The only German long-range bomber of WT, the He 177 Greif Griffin, should have been one of the best German aircraft of the war. Instead, the He 177 became one of the worst aircraft ever built. For a bomber designed in the mid-1930s, its design was ambitious to say the least. Unfortunately, the He 177's design exceeded the Germans' technical ability to be able to reach its desired range of 6,000 km or into 3,700 mi 3,200 mi. The He 177 needed two engines capable of producing 2,000 RAG, 1,500 kWh of power. At that time, no aircraft engine came close. When they were used, the engine's cooling systems were so poor that they regularly overheated and shut down, or simply caught on fire, leading to the crashes of numerous models throughout the war. Boulton-Paul Defiant. Another British aircraft, the Boulton-Paul Defiant, was built in direct response to the push for more maneuverable aircraft by the German Luftwaffe. And whilst it succeeded as one of the most maneuverable Allied aircraft of the war, it was undermined in its role as an interceptor by the fact its armaments were all rear-facing. Designed to shoot down bombers, the Defiant was ill-equipped to handle their fighter escorts. Likewise, their rear-facing weapons made it impossible to go on offense, leading to a high percentage of Defiants to be shot down before it was forced to be withdrawn from service in 1942 and replaced. Blackburn Botha. Built in the period of rearmament that preceded the outbreak of WW2, the Botha was designed to be used as a torpedo bomber and was meant to be instrumental in the hunt for German U-boats and the protection of transatlantic convoys. Though its design made it a formidable torpedo bomber on paper, it was let down due to the severely underpowered Bristol Perseus engines selected as the Botha's power plant. By using underpowered engines, the Botha could not serve effectively as a torpedo bomber and was withdrawn from this use in 1941. Supermarine Swift. Built by the same company responsible for the famous Spitfire and its navalized variant, the Seafire, the Swift was a nightmare for the Royal Navy. After suffering several delays in the development period, the Swift entered service in 1954, but the issues with the Swift did not end there. The Swift made headlines in Britain after a series of accidents caused the Navy to ground it for a while, meaning that when it was finally withdrawn from service in 1967, it only had a relatively brief service life. From a performance perspective, the Swift was such a poor naval aircraft that it damaged the image of naval aviation in the UK and was partly used as a justification for the eventual nationalization and subsequent consolidation of the UK aircraft manufacturing industry. Lavochkin Gorbunov Gudkov LA-GG-3, one of the most produced Soviet aircraft during WW2. The LA-GG-3 was nevertheless hated by the very people who flew it. Despite being among the heaviest fighters of the war, the LA-GG-3 was built from wood and had no armor to speak of, meaning the aircraft as a whole had a high fatality rate when it came up against better armored German aircraft like the Bf-109. Furthermore, its Klimov M105PF engine was woefully underpowered for its weight, thus limiting its speed, maneuverability, and climb rate. The Havilland Sea Vixen. The premier British carrier aircraft of the late 1950s, 1960s, and early 1970s, the Royal Navy had to suffer through 14 years of using a Sea Vixen that was already outdated by the time it entered service. The Sea Vixen was designed in an era of subsonic jets still using conventional guns. By the time it entered service, however, jets were supersonic and used high-speed aerial missiles that were perfect for downing subsonic fighters, further weakening the Sea Vixen's effectiveness. The GEC-AI-18 air interception radar installed on the Sea Vixen was also ill-suited to the new threats the Sea Vixen was expected to go up against. Henkel He-162. Yet another German aircraft from WW2, the He-162, was supposed to be the more advanced answer to the Me-262 fighter jet. And while the Me-262 had its own fair share of problems, they paled in comparison to those of the He-162. The He-162's main problem arose from its construction. Built from wood rather than metal, the He-162 suffered from structural issues throughout the entirety of its short service life. Though being made of wood meant it was more lightweight than other German fighters, it was rather compact, which placed a constraint on the amount of fuel it could carry. Even at full fuel, the He-162 could only fly for around 20 minutes maximum. Due to placing the engine at the top of the fuselage, any pilot bailing out of the He-162 risked being sucked into the engine, contributing to dozens of pilot deaths that could otherwise have been easily avoided. Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet. Perhaps the most innovative aircraft design up until that point, the Me-163 stands apart as the only rocket-powered aircraft ever built. But this is precisely what doomed the Comet. Using a single Walter HWK-109-509 rocket engine, the Comet couldn't use standard aviation fuel. Instead, it was powered by either T-STOF or C-STOF. Both of these fuels are incredibly volatile, and there are numerous cases where ground crews were seriously injured due to improperly handling these fuels. Using both fuels also weakened the Comet's airframe due to the corrosive nature of both the fuels, meaning their operational service lives were limited from the get-go. Indeed, since the beginning of modern military aviation during the First World War, literally hundreds of wonderful aircraft have been produced. But there have also been an equally large number of aircraft that were completely unsuccessful in every role they served. For the purposes of this video, we only include custom-built military aircraft that have become reality. We also look at all types of military aircraft, not just fighters, but also reconnaissance aircraft, bombers, and trainers. We come to the end of our video. If you like military videos with such war technologies, do not forget subscribe. See you.